and surprise us. And when we're kids, sometimes we wish for something and we think, oh, Mom, can you get me this? Could you get me this? And sometimes you get those things and sometimes not. But, one thing that happens a lot, not only because of Christmas, but because it's the end of the year, is there's this thing where a lot of people get gym memberships and they also get a lot of exercise equipment. Why do you think that is? Good intention. Well, see, at the end of the year, a lot of people make resolutions. And they say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And so we do all these. So there's certain gifts that come that it's not just about the gift. You have to actually do something. For example, if someone gives me a book, and it's full of knowledge, full of information, if I just set it on the counter in our living room, am I going to get all the information from that book just by walking by it? Just by leaving it there? No, right? You have to actually read it, right, to get all that information. No matter what the book is about, it could be about a mechanic, it could be tips on being a mechanic, it could be about cooking, it could be about health. No matter what it is, you have to actually read it to get that information and get the benefits of it. So, what about like a weight bench where you lift weights? Do your muscles grow if you just walk by it? That would be awesome, right? So yeah, and I walk. My son has a weight bench, and I walk by it all the time, and I say, I should start doing some exercises, just to be healthier. But it's something that your muscles are not going to grow if you don't get on that bench and actually start to do things. Another thing is, because you buy these new jogging shoes, your new jogging clothes, does that automatically mean that the fat starts to burn off just because you bought them? That would be amazing. Yeah. So if there are so many things that are awesome things that we can buy for ourselves or for someone else, but they require an action for us to do. To give you an example, on Thursday, me and my wife and Nadia, my daughter, went to the coast. We went up to a little bit south of Pacifica, and I know it's going to sound really bad in church, but we went to Devil's Slide Trail. And it was just a trail that we went to walk along the coast, right south of Pacifica, north of Half Moon Bay, and we just went to do that. And I'm sore today. Why do you think that is? Because it's not a regular thing that I do. But if I wanted to get in better shape, I need to do that more often, right? I need to actually do that. So just because, even though I went once to this a couple of days ago, it doesn't mean that automatically my body's just going to become healthier just because I went once. I have to do that. I have to make it a habit. The reason I asked you these things is because a lot of times we make all these plans for the year, and we make all these things where we want to be better at, but we sometimes don't want to do our part in that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our spiritual walk with Jesus, and I don't know what plan it is that you have with Jesus, or any other plan that you have. It could be about health. This year, I don't know if you've made some resolutions, but it could be about health. It could be about maybe reading more. Maybe you already have a stack of books that you haven't gotten to and you want to read them. But I want to give you an example that Jesus gives us in the Bible, that no matter what it is that you're going through, he lets us know that he is always there by our side. And so our spiritual journey with Jesus also requires something from our part. from us. Um, Something that I always pray for in my prayers is that He helps us to do the things that we have to do. Because we can look in this Bible and we can carry it around with us, and it's full of promises. But we also have to trust in Him. We have to trust that that those promises are for us, and that all that joy that He talks about, that we want to experience it, but we have to have a relationship with Him in order to do it. So it requires us to do something. So I'm going to invite you to join me in the book of John. In the book of John, chapter 15, we're going to read 15 through chapter 15. We're going to be reading 1 through 16, 1 through 17. So John 15, 1 through 17. So at this moment, Jesus is walking with His disciples on His way to Gethsemane, and as they're walking, I get the impression that they saw a vine on the side. And I don't know, I work for a farming company, and I don't know if you've seen when you drive out, if any of you drive outside of Tracy or into the Bay Area or the Napa area, there's a lot of grapes. And now for my employer, they have walnuts. So right now they prune walnuts. And they prune the tree a certain way to where all the machines can get through. And so when they're harvesting the walnuts, air can get into the trees. I don't know if you've noticed with grapes. There's different types of grapes, and the farmers prune them and they train them so they come up a certain way. So they shape them. That helps me to understand why Jesus used the vine in this example, because if you've ever been up to the redwoods in Northern California, those trees they're huge, and they're awesome, they're beautiful, they're strong. And the vine, you would think, why would He use a vine? All these trees, all these giant sequoias, these giant redwoods that are so strong and so beautiful and so tall, why would He use the vine? Well, as He's walking by it, I think Ellen White talks a little bit about how the vine depends on something else to grow up. I don't know if you've seen the way the farmers prune their vineyards and the way they have them. They set a trellis where the vine is, and they train it to go straight up, and then they train it almost like a T, one side and to the other side, and they have a row of them, and they do this for harvesting reason, and depending on what kind of grapes they have, they train it in the way that they want to. An example that I can give you, the driveway to the shop where I work, my employer has a variety of grapes on the left side, and we have a neighbor who has another variety on the right side as you go in. And when you walk in, and when you drive in, if you look on the grapes that my employer has, those grapes go up in the form of a T, and there's only a few little branches that stick up. It's just one vine, and then little ones that stick up like every 12 inches. So there's only like 4 or 5 on that whole vine that stick straight up, and they do that there's a purpose for all of that. Our neighbor, he's a different farmer. He has different ideas, and he wants his grapes to grow a little different. So when you look at his vines come up and they come out to both sides the same as my employer's, but on his you see all these little branches sticking up. His pruning is a lot different than what my employer does, because my employer is looking for more for quality for depending on who they sell the grapes to for wine. So they looking more for quality. And my neighbor, I wondered why he pruned his grapes the way he did, because when you look at it, it just looks messier. Just Just by visually looking at it, when you look at my employers, it looks really nice. Like everything's almost the same, very uniform. And you look at theirs, it looks almost like they need to be pruned. But that's not what it is. It's just they train their vines so that they can produce a lot more grapes. Now, the difference with that is that they're going to get more grapes, and their grapes might be smaller because they're looking more for quantity, not quality. So that's just an example of the vine. But Jesus uses the vine because the vine depends on the trellis as it's going up. And and then each farmer trains it. So if you were to plant one right there on that corner, it would go wherever you trained it to go. And if you just didn't prune it, you could prune it so it just goes straight up. If you just prune it, but employers do it to the side for harvest reasons, for pruning reasons. You're not going to have somebody a ladder that's 40 feet high for pruning or harvesting. So as Jesus is walking to Gethsemane with his disciples, what I think happened is that he saw a vine on the side as he's walking, and this is what he says to his disciples. He says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing." He's giving you the example that you need to be connected to him to bear fruit. And you might be thinking, okay, so what does that mean? Do you just trust him? Do you just go to church? Well, there's a lot of things that Jesus did throughout his life that made him connected with God. He just wasn't there. He didn't just say, "I'm yours." There were certain things that he did that helped him be connected to his Father. And he's trying to give that illustration to his disciples as they're following him, and he does that, and he does that for us today. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. And then this is, verse 9 says, "As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love." So when he's talking about bearing fruit, what do you think he's talking about? Is he talking about grapes? And if you look at it in a literal translation, if you just go and study grapes and the way they are, you would say, well, you get this certain type of grape, and you could translate it in a literal sense. But what he is trying to tell you is he wants you to bear fruit. Now, in order for you to bear fruit, you're gonna want to know, well, what is bearing fruit? What is bearing fruit if I have a relationship with Jesus? And that's what he starts to tell us in verse 9. "As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. So abide in my love." What is he talking about here? Love. "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." He mentioned love. Now what does he mention now? Joy. Joy. "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. No longer do I call you servants, nor a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all things that I heard from my Father I have made known to you." He mentions love, he mentions joy, and he mentions friends. "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. Verse 17 says, these things I command you, that you love one another. We cannot have a relationship with anybody if there isn't love, joy, or friendship. That's a true friend. I don't know if you've been in situations where you describe someone that you know and you describe them as friends, and this is my friend, but there's always someone closer to you. You go, oh no, this is my true friend. And it doesn't mean that they're not your friends, but there's something special about that friendship. It's someone you can share anything with. You could talk to them about anything, go to them about anything. And we as in our human nature, we say that. Oh no, this is my true friend. You're not saying anything bad about your other friends. There's just something that brings you closer. And just to give you an example of what Jesus is trying to tell us here, if you go back to chapter 5, verse 30. Now, if you want to look for it in your Bibles, John 5, verse 30 says, I can of myself do nothing. This is Jesus speaking. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me. So he is trying to share with you the connection that he has with his Father and what he did. So if you follow Jesus' life, ever from when he was born all the way and up until the cross, he did so many things. And you might think, he just did those because those things just came along. You know, there was a purpose to everything that he did. When you think about how all the times that he suffered, that people did mean things to him, they sought out to kill him, and they did all these things. You think, are those things that just happened are they things that just happened randomly, or was there a reason why all of those things happened? All of those things happened because of the relationship that he had with God, and he was doing all those things for you and me. That's why he went through all of those. And because he did his part in what he wanted to do for all of us, it was because of that connection that he had with God. It wasn't just because he thought, I want to do this. He had a connection with God, and he wants us to have that connection with him so that we can have that connection with God through Jesus. I want to read something to you from Desire of Ages, page 675. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. She's quoting from the Bible. Christ said to his disciples, he was about to be removed from them. Though he was about to be removed from them, their spiritual union with him was to be unchanged. The connection of the branch with the vine, he said, represents the relation you are to sustain to me. The scion is engrafted into the living vine, and fiber by fiber, vein by vein, it grows into the vine stalk. The life of the vine becomes the life of the branch. So the soul, dead in trespasses and sins, receives life through the connection with Christ. By faith in him as a personal Savior, the union is formed. So I'm going to read another little sentence that follows this. And I don't know what your year was like this year. A year ago, if you had asked me, Leo, prepare for 2019, these things can happen, I could never have imagined what would happen this year. I lost my dad this year. Another experience that I had at work was a coworker of ours passed away on driving a tractor. He was making furrows on a field, and another worker found him just leaning on the steering wheel just at the end of the field. He was 79 years old. His family had begged him to stop working, and that was his life to him. A lot of the older generation, especially people who didn't get didn't study to have a profession. They're just working people. They just wanted to work. And his daughter told me that that they had asked him for, like, they've been asking him for like the last 15 years to just retire, spend time. And he said, no, I'm not going to stop working until I die. And that's what happened with him. And when my dad passed away, I felt like Jesus was there with me the whole time. I felt very, very secure in the hope that he brought me, the just being dependent on the promises that he gives us, and I felt really at peace with what was happening with my dad. And we went through that, and some things still hit me now, but I'm comfortable and I'm glad that I know Jesus because he helped me through all of that. But one of the hardest things that I had to do with our friend, his name was Miguel, but we always knew him as Mike because there was two Miguels. And so in order to separate them, we called one Miguel and one Mike. And when his family wanted to come out to, they wanted to see the tractor where he passed away in. And they came out, and it was his three daughters and his son and some grandkids. And it was one of those things that when you face a situation like with my dad, you're in that situation. And so you're going through it and you're experiencing it on a personal level. And as close as I was to Mike, when his family came to see the tractor, I had to I almost had to step away. I had to step away almost and say, this is what your dad was doing. And it was, and I had to go through all these details where I had to kind of ask God to give me patience, to give me a peace where it wasn't about me. He wasn't my dad as much as I cared about him. And I had to show him this is what he did. And then they got on the tractor and the grandkids, and then they said, is this where the tractor ended up? And I said, no, it was down the field. And we had marked the spot. The spot was marked. It was still marked from where he left the tractor, but we hadn't moved it since. And it was one of the hardest things because you're trying to explain something to someone else that is going through a loss. But because I had just gone through one a few months earlier, it helped me to understand what they were going through. And so by me being connected to Jesus, it helped me through my dad's passing, but it also helped me to step away from Mike's family and let them and I was just sitting there on to the side, just kind of letting them, they were hugging each other, praying, and asking questions like, can we put a cross here? Can we, all these things where it wasn't about me. He wasn't my dad. But God had touched my heart in such a way that I had to represent him there. And so the hope and the peace that God had brought me in my experience, I was able to share with them then when they came out there. I didn't think I was going to say anything. But when I told them about my dad and I told them, look, I understand when you're going through and this is what got me through, it made me feel so much better because I was able to share Jesus in a situation where it wasn't about me. But he presented that moment to where I could share about his love for me and for all of us, but I could share it in with an experience that I had just gone through. Years ago, when I was at the Spanish church, I was an early teens teacher, and I remembered something. And I was looking as I was preparing this sermon, I was looking to find it, and I found the lesson that I used then. And we've been here maybe 6 years, maybe But when I'm thinking this lesson was 2000, no, the lesson was 5 years ago. So we've been here less. But I was able to find it, and it was a lesson called cross training. It was an early teens lesson that I gave at the Spanish church. And this is what the author of that lesson wrote. And I looked for it because it says, he stepped into the desert to prepare for his ministry by fasting and seeking God. That's what Jesus did. He steps boldly into unknown territory, sending demons out of helpless people. He sneaks away at night to be alone with God in quiet communion, and the next day he is speaking to the masses. He eats and drinks with sinners. Just look at the Savior and see everything that he's been doing in preparing his relationship with God. He lived a disciplined life. Good thing for you and me, because it took heaps of discipline to submit to the Father in Gethsemane instead of taking the easy way and choosing not to die. So aching and sore, destined for the most horrible experience ever, he steps towards Calvary. And why did he do all of that? He did it for all of us. So when he's trying to give them the example of depending on God, he's trying to tell you why he did it too. You know, he was depending on God, and everything that he was doing it for you and for me. So that today, this year, what's today, the 28th, as we look forward to 2020, we have all these different things that we're thinking of. There's students who are thinking about school, college, maybe someone's thinking about a job, maybe health, maybe something you found out this month, or maybe something you're just looking forward to do. Maybe you want to be closer to somebody, or maybe there's something that, maybe it's your journey with God. But whatever it is, I want you to know that just like he described the vine and that we are the branches, he wants us to stay connected to him. So how many of you want to be more connected to God this year? I think we all do. No matter how well connected you say you are, you can always be more connected. You know, if you had asked me a year ago, Leo, are you well connected enough because this could happen this year? I would have said, I don't know how I would handle that, even if you told me what I would go through. But even with my imperfections and my human nature, God found a way to just be there by my side as I went through this situation with my dad. Troy Fitzgerald is a pastor and author, and in a devotional called Conviction. It's for 2020, and I found something that really caught my attention. He says, "Know that our effort is not what wins our eternal home. Only the finished work of Christ on Calvary can pay your way home. However, your effort to practice a godly life is a way to cultivate God's image in you. Effort is not about trying to win salvation, but practicing virtue and righteousness in order to display God's glory. You will fail from time to time, but your Savior did not. You might fall in weakness, but Christ's victory for you is sure. You might stumble as you try to walk, but keep walking until you get home." One last verse that I would like to read is in 2 Peter 1. 2 Peter 1, and then I'm going to read 3 through 8. As his divine power has given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue, by which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. But also for this reason, giving all diligence, added to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, to self-control perseverance, to perseverance godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. For if these things are yours and abound, you will be neither barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. We need to stay connected to Jesus. And I would pray that is the same desire that all of us have, is to be more connected to Him. And whatever, all those other things that can be presented for you in 2020, let them fall as they fall. But knowing that if you have you're well connected with Jesus, He's going to be there by your side if it's something you're going through, and He's going to be there to encourage you. Only when you're just looking for what classes to take or what school to go to, He will be there by your side. So thank you. Want to thank God for this beautiful Sabbath, and just thank Him that He's always there for us, and no matter what we're going through. Thanks.